Hello, everybody. This is Voices of Victory Ministries coming to you once again with Jesus in your everyday life. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and do a Bible study real quick. And Psalm 56, I'm going to read verses 3, 4, and 10 and 11. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you, in God, whose word I praise, in God I trust. I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? In God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me? So, David begins the psalm by describing the severity of the attacks that he is suffering. And if we notice David's emphasis upon the repeated verse all day long they press their attack. See, David is experiencing a wearing attack from his enemies. The beginning, is of the first verse, describes how men are hotly pursuing him. So the language depicts a military struggle. So in the midst of these conditions, David cries out to God, be merciful to me. In the middle of this situation, I think it is clear what can man do to David? They are pursuing him across the wilderness. They are pressing their attacks on David every day. The slanderers are pursuing him all day long. Many are attacking him from a higher position. And as we read these words, I cannot help but see that David is working through his emotions as he pens this song. He is afraid, but knows within himself that he does not need to be afraid because he has God. And he puts his confidence in God, and he will praise his word. So I believe this is valuable for us to see as we encounter life's difficulties. It is not that we will not have the feeling of fear or that we will not go through times of distress. Rather, we know that we are supposed to do when these tough times come. We know we are to trust God. We must remind ourselves of what we are supposed to do. And, therefore we always need to boldly say to ourselves that the Lord is our helper. We will not be afraid. What can man do to us? So the promise that David relied upon, is also the promise given to us. In fact, the writer of Hebrews is quoted this very psalm in his desire to help us understand what kind of helper God is for us. So the message of Psalm 56 is certainly applicable to our lives. And how does trusting in God remove fear? Well, God's word, is a source of confidence. Repeatedly David states that he will praise the word of the Lord. And when we are attacked, we need to be able to draw on the stable assurance of God's word rather than the ever-changing perspectives, of public opinion. A lack of knowledge of the scriptures is crippling to the Christian. Today, too many people have too much of their faith based solely on emotions and feelings, and that goes for myself included at times. But our emotions can rapidly change, and when we are under attack, it is our emotions that fail and our feelings that become a roller coaster ride. So it is when we are under attack and our emotions are afraid that we need to be able to know and rely upon God's word. See, things are the most difficult when we keep our focus on the problems of this world and lose sight of our heavenly purpose. And trusting God, it means that that I'm going to look for God's help, and we'll be reminded that God is in charge of the big picture. And there are many times when we are suffering or under attack that we do not think that we can endure another day. But how many times, however, God has offered relief for the moment to help us get our head about us and continue to press forward. So despite all that David went through in his life, he returned to this thing. If God is for us, who can be against us? When God is on our side, it is possible to find a refuge in the midst of the storm. Our relationship with God has greater value than simply trying to stop the present suffering. We are able to surrender ourselves to God, to God's control, and allow the Creator to help us through our difficulties. So this is the picture of the apostles who would experience tremendous suffering, yet we were able to count these things as a joy for the cause of Christ. And as Christians, we are called to experience suffering, but suffering does not equal abandonment from God. And there is a trust of ultimate justice in the end, as well as a reward for our obedience to the Lord. So it is in these things that we are able to remove fear in dire times. And thank you for whoever may watch this. I pray and hope that this has blessed your heart. And I pray that if you're lost, it has encouraged you to the Lord. But God bless you, and thank you for watching, for whoever may come across this video.